Okay, time to make another dinner bread. Not sure why I ended up making 2 breads 2 days in a row because I don't normally serve bread with dinner, but it just sounded really good today. So I'm doing it. Everything you see me do today is going to be double my normal recipe because the liquid portion of this recipe, when I asked my son to pick it up, I just said to pick up 1, and he picked up a really large one. I don't know if he knew how much I used for this recipe and just decided that I needed to double it, or if Nathan, stop, or if he was really clueless, but I'm gonna go with the former because boys can be devious. So, in my bowl here, 6 cups of bread flour. You don't have to use bread flour. You can use all-purpose. I prefer bread flour. I like the way it makes things a little bit lighter. 2 teaspoons of salt. We do a tablespoon of baking powder. I love that baking powder has the little built-in lid lip so that you can just scrape it off in there. Makes things so convenient. And then I have 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar. Oven's ready. It's at 375 degrees. So 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar. Loosely packed, very loosely packed. Trust me, you don't want a whole lot of sweetness, but you want enough sweetness to set off the flavor that you're gonna get here. And one other thing I'm gonna add, remember, this is doubled, okay? For the normal recipe, you need 1 stick of butter. And you need half of it right now and half of it later. For the double recipe, you need 2 sticks of butter. So you need 1 stick of butter, or I need 1 stick of butter right now. And then I'll mix in another stick of butter, or I will pour over another stick of butter later. And I use salted butter just because it offsets that sweetness just a tiny bit. And I'm just kind of mixing this around in here a little bit. Can you get the picture? Can you see that, Nathan? The worst thing about a whisk is when the stuff you want in your mix gets stuck in the whisk. Okay, there's a nice big chunk. The last thing I'm gonna add is room temperature beer. Ordinarily, I would just add 1 12-ounce can, but doubled, I'm adding 24 ounces. Can you see into the bowl? It's always really cool to me how it just bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. Stop coughing, you're recording.
Trying.
Bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. It also will react with that baking powder and bubble up more while it's baking. And I'm going to get this all stirred in. It doesn't take long to get it mixed up, and you'll notice I switched from the whisk to the rubber spatula just because it's so much easier to mix it up with the rubber spatula once you get that poured in there. Way easier, and it doesn't take long for it to come together either. I like to add, and my family likes it when I add sharp cheddar cheese to the bread. It just adds a little extra depth, a little extra flavor. You can do this with some herbs. You could add, I could make it with garlic, or maybe if you were having Italian, you wanted to add some garlic and maybe Parmesan instead of the cheddar cheese. This is 2 cups of shredded sharp cheddar. We only do sharp cheddar. I don't fool with that mild stuff. I like some bite to my cheese. No pun intended. But if you wanted to do it in Italian, you can maybe add some garlic powder or even some freshly chopped garlic, and I'd say maybe some oregano, and use Parmesan cheese in it. Or you could do a different version with some other kind of food. Maybe if you wanted it to be more German, just skip the cheese altogether. Although they do have some amazing German cheeses out there, let me tell you. We are cheese connoisseurs in our house. We love cheese, all kinds of cheese. There's very little cheese we don't like. Not sure I could eat that cheese that they let the maggots grow in. That's pretty disgusting. So, I have 2 bread pans. Hopefully you can tell that they have been liberally sprayed with cooking spray. I'm gonna put half of this in one pan, half of it in the other. It's gonna go in the oven, 375 for 40 minutes. After that 40 minutes, I'm gonna open it up. I'm gonna pour the other half of my butter over these and let it bake on the outside and into the bread. And it gives it this gorgeous, just crusty feeling in your mouth. Y'all will not believe how good it even feels when you're eating this bread. So once I get it done to the 40-minute mark, I will let you see what I mean. Obviously you guys are smart enough to figure out, just pour it over the top of it. But it's kind of cool to watch it slide down in there and bubble up too. We'll be back in a little while. All right, so I told you 40 minutes, and then I'm gonna show you the next step. Here we go. I'll pour half of that. This would be half a stick of butter under ordinary circumstances. It's not. It is, in fact, 1/4 of a cup though. Or a half. Anyway, yeah, this is half a stick of butter going on each of these, which is the equivalent of a 1/4 cup. For this last step, all that butter is going to just seep down into the bread and around and even into the bottom of it. And it's gonna cook up and make it nice and beautiful and crispy. I just took the first loaf out of the oven and you can see it's finishing up. Look at those bubbles happening in there, y'all. That butter is going to seep right into that bread. I'm gonna let these sit for about 10 minutes or so before I cut into them. And I also wanted you to know that it did bake for an extra 10 minutes after I poured the butter over the top. All right, time to take this beer bread, sharp cheddar beer bread, out of the pan. Let it sit here for about 10 minutes and soak up all that extra butter. Should be ready to just flip out of there. Yeah, my watch stuck to the pan. Isn't that pretty? All that white on the top you see, that's just the butter. This piece right here is the piece that that my guys mostly fight over. This is gonna pull apart and tear apart just a little bit because it's still really warm. Once it's a little bit cooler than it currently is, it cuts just beautifully. But my guys, I'm telling you, that end piece is the crispiest part of the whole loaf, and they just love it. The inside though, you can see is really nice and soft. And it's a good thing for Chris that he's the only one in here right now, because the big boys and Benjamin don't know that I have cut this and gotten it ready to eat. So I assume that Chris is going to be the one grabbing this piece that I just cut. Am I right?
Ma'am.
That's what I figured. So, y'all try the beer bread. I hope you love it. Take care.